Enjoy a seat at the table for great conversation and good company.
Welcome to And Good Company. I'm Sarah Beetleholtz. We all know a great dinner party isn't really about the food. It's about the people seated around the table engaging in lively discussions. And Good Company gives you a seat at the table to enjoy smart and interesting conversations as they happen. I am pleased to be in the company of Mary Beth Trippis and Harry Cunningham, the co-founders of Good Market, which is a new retail concept from Vera Bradley. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So first, this has been a real busy time for Vera Bradley in Fort Wayne. We've got the launch of Good Market, and then we've also got the Bradley Hotel that just opened. So it's a very exciting time.
Pretty wild times for sure.
Yeah. So I wanted to start a little bit with, because you know, everybody who knows Vera Bradley obviously knows Barbara Bakard and the history, but it's people like you who are really behind the scenes and making things happen and really being innovative. So I wanted to start with getting a little bit about your background, and then I really want you to start with telling the story from the beginning, from the ideation of how Good Market came to be.
Great.
Okay, I'll start with background. I've been in the retail industry for a long time. Started on the retail side right out of college with May Company. So, you know, department store buyer, that whole thing, back and forth from the buying office in the stores. Moved over when my second daughter, who is now 22, was born. A little more flexibility, you know, as a mom. Wanted to do something different, got onto the wholesale side. Landed on Liz Claiborne, you know, on the brand and the behemoth for quite a while. At the time when we were incubating brands, we were purchasing brands and apparel. I was on the accessories team. Harry and I actually worked together there, didn't even know it because it was such a big organization, but really had the opportunity to learn and grow very quickly there and take on a lot of new responsibility. Had great leaders along the way that empowered me to take risks, learn new things, pulled me into things that I had no idea that I didn't know or wanted to know. So really fun times there. Did a couple other things in the meantime after I left Liz, went to the Jones Group, handbag background, left and did some consulting with some new brands, which is really interesting now that I'm, you know, doing what we're doing now with Good Market. So got to understand, coming from big organizations to independent owners, how they behave completely differently. It's your livelihood really on the line with everything that you're doing. And then ended up here in Fort Wayne, Indiana with Vera Bradley to take on initially the wholesale space. But since then, my career has evolved over the 5 years that I've been here, and now I'm responsible for all of revenue. So all of our stores, all of the wholesale side of the business, our digital piece of the business, and retail brand experience, of which Harry's on my team there, doing that. So that's my background story.
So me, not that much different actually. So I started actually working while I was in college in the department store industry. I worked for Dillard's for about 10 years. Saks recruited me from there, and I've spent about 14 years at Saks with call it a 10-minute hiatus where I was at Liz Claiborne across the street from Mary Beth. It was about 15 months actually. Went back to Saks, and it was, you know, Saks Fifth Avenue was always kind of a dream job that I wanted to get, but never actually thought I would get, but still kind of kept focused on it, and ultimately was, you know, lucky enough to have the opportunity to do some really incredible, amazing projects, not least of which certainly is the windows on Fifth Avenue, which everybody, you know, knows, no matter where they are, whether you're a shopper or not. But after I had been there about 14 years, our CEO here at Vera Bradley, he and I had worked together at Saks.
Robert Wallstrom.
Yeah, that's right. So Rob and I had worked together at Saks, and we've known each other, actually, we were just talking the other day, for about 20 years now. So I'm aging Rob, I'm not aging me. He knew me when I was getting dropped off at daycare.
Okay.
No, so he was here a little over a year before he called and gave me the opportunity to come. And a lot of people have said, you know, why would you leave Saks? It's such a great place. And I was sort of at the point that I had done what I felt like I wanted to do there and could do, and it was an opportunity to do something completely different that I had never really expected I would do, but also an opportunity to work alongside Barb and Pat, who founded the company, and you know, it's such an amazing brand with such a great heritage that, you know, will be 40 years old next year. It's not every day that you get to actually sit alongside the founders of a brand that is so well known. So it was really a no-brainer to kind of come in here and start doing that. And fast forward till now, I've actually gotten to, alongside Mary Beth, become a founder of a new initiative, this new initiative that we're doing, which is kind of fun. If you think about the companies within Vera Bradley, we have obviously Vera Bradley founded by Barb and Pat, and we have Pura Vida founded by Griffin Paul, and now we're proud to say that we have Good Market founded by Mary Beth and Harry. So
Right.
it's sort of a crazy thing that's happened, but it's really been, I sort of look at everything as a new adventure, and there's something exciting about it. I relocated to Fort Wayne with my family almost 4 years ago this fall. After commuting back and forth from New York every other week, and I know you spend time in New York. It's not the easiest commute in the world, and so it's better to be able to actually watch your kids grow up. So
I also think, though, that one of the things that I was thinking about when I was looking at the development of the ideation of Good Market was that what you two is really a collaborative, and that you have very different skill sets. I mean, you were very much, besides being the money person, that's very important, but also really understanding the tech side and the e-commerce and how to have relationships, in a sense, with Vera Bradley. It may be the third party, but with the case of Good Market, it's really your vendors that you're working with. And then you really grew up and have had tremendous success in the merchandising and branding and all of the development of the representation and the lifestyle that's connotated with brands. So when you really looked at those together, I could see how why you would be successful. But it also made me wonder at this time, when everybody's talking, first of all, you launched this. I know you were working on it before, but you really launched this during a pandemic.
Yeah.
Yes.
You also launched it in a time when, for the past they've been touting the demise of retail for probably the last 10 years, but really what has been really dropped off a cliff in really the last 2 years. And here you are launching a new brick and mortar concept. So one, I'm really curious of how the idea came. And then two, what was the reaction of your CEO and board? Because there is also the shift now, which I also want to talk to you about with Vera Bradley, that now it's a public company, and that changes, like from Liz Claiborne, when you have the founders and they sort of move out. But what was the reaction? So sort of tell me, so did this idea for Good Market, was it, now I know you bought Pura Vida, which does do bracelets,
Right, for charity,
which I couldn't believe. They started at $6, and in 2019 they had $68.3 million in revenue.
Yeah.
But they've also supported over 172
right, 100, I think 120, somewhere.
nonprofits and organizations,
right.
and have given away 1.1 million since they founded.
Yeah.
So did it start there? Like all of a sudden you're like, okay, we have this brand, and talk about, first of all, let's just start with, because I think this will help. Why did Vera Bradley want to acquire a significant interest in Pura Vida? Because it wasn't in their wheelhouse of bags and handbags, accessories, and the fabric, quilted fabric entity. So start there.
I would say, and you jump in too. I think that it's not about necessarily being in the wheelhouse. I think it was more about the casual and approachable nature of Pura Vida, which very much aligned with that of Vera Bradley. And Vera Bradley is not an elitist brand at all. It's one, if one woman sees another woman carrying a Vera Bradley, they almost feel like they know each other already. And I think similar with Pura Vida, it's a happy kind of thing. And I would say that, I'll kind of jump into the Good Market story. You sort of asked the question perfectly to set it up. We didn't have Good Market as the idea at the beginning. And what you mentioned about sort of retail falling off a cliff, we certainly were aware of what was going on in retail and continue to stay very on top of that. And it was really about us sort of brainstorming mid-pandemic. So this didn't start that long ago. It was probably late last summer when we were just brainstorming about what could we do with our stores. We knew that retail was changing very, very rapidly. We have a good number of physical stores out there in a variety of markets. And it was sort of the conversation was really more around what should we be doing with our stores to make them different. And
thinking 5-10 years from now.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that started even before the pandemic.
Well,
actually.
yeah, it
we
had
were
to
traveling,
right.
and we went to see Magnolia. We made some other trips, and we're like, wow, there's some really cool things happening here. How do we incorporate some of these learnings into we have a full fleet of stores across the country.
And Vera Bradley also, in truth, also had to look at some of its own issues with having too much in the market and who your partners were, and sort of bringing back that sense of the brand and really controlling it. And so, and then also looking at your stores, and so you're out there, you're checking your stores, and you're looking at all the, like Magnolia, and then the pioneer woman, she has a store now
She's a store,
that's
yeah.
very experiential and they're very on brand. Okay, so you're out doing that.
Yeah.
And then,
So do you want to go? You maybe keep.
So just even
yeah.
out doing that, we had a lot of different experiences of not only physical space but product. Our teams are doing a great job on the Vera Bradley side, keeping product evolving. So as we're thinking about, okay, we're going to be adding new categories, how do you do that in a 1,200 square foot or 1,500 square foot space? You know, people are trying some different experiential ideas. How do we figure that piece of it out? So just lots of that conversation happening, not knowing the end result of how we're going to get there
Right.
by any means in any of these travels that we were doing.
because initially you were really focused on looking at what you could do for Vera Bradley.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And you
Yes.
understand, and I think it's really important also not to take away the fact that you have to have a very clear understanding of who your customer is, what's the brand mission, and what are you trying to achieve.
Right.
So that you have to have at the get-go. So
Yeah.
you're sort of interpreting all of this and trying to figure out with Vera Bradley, and then Pura Vida sort of comes in the mix, and then what?
Yeah, so I think it wasn't really about even Pura Vida coming into the mix. It was really, the original part of the conversation was really just around how can we change the Vera Bradley experience. We know that we have a very established customer that we know exceptionally well. How do we reach new people? How do we improve dwell time? How do we get new people across the threshold? So all of those were parts of the conversation. And early on, there was an idea of what would happen if the store was Vera Bradley and we could put Pura Vida in, some way, and then have space that could flex. So it really started out as, how can we try something completely differently, and really approach it differently. So it was about sort of creating a lab that would allow us to try things. And I think, just to be clear, we haven't lost sight of that with Good Market. The Good Market is still 100% a lab for us to try
Right.
things and take learnings and put them into Vera Bradley. But we had this meeting mid-pandemic, and we were all at 6-foot tables, 12 feet apart, whatever it was. And afterward, Mary Beth and I came back to our flagship store here in Fort Wayne, and we walked through it, and we were still talking because that's how we are, just like always brainstorming ideas, and looked across the road, and it was under construction. They were putting the new road in, and I don't even remember which one of us said it, but one of us said, hey, let's just go look at that Williams-Sonoma space,
Right.
because it was more about, like, if we could get more space,
Right.
we could start to tell the story even better.
Right.
And we know, like Mary Beth mentioned, there's so much innovation that's happening inside the Vera Bradley brand, which is not new. The company's
Right.
been innovative,
Right.
For almost 40 years. How could we talk about these brand extensions in a new, really
Right.
crazy lifestyle way?
And might need more space.
And so, okay, so you talked about the laboratory. So first of all, that space is 5,000 square feet.
Right.
But I also, as an entrepreneur and someone who does a lot of branding, we always used to use, if it plays in Peoria, it'll play. So I sort of think, if it plays in Fort Wayne, it'll play.
Yeah.
So in that sense, if you can test it and refine it and figure it out, then you can also then pick it up and take it to other places, or use it to try new things and see what works, and then take it for Vera Bradley.
That's
Right.
exactly
And
right. Yeah.
do you think, though, that besides the internet, okay, and online shopping, we're going to take that out for a second.
Yep.
But do you think that the Apple stores really was that point, that change, where people really wanted their shopping experience to be more experiential? I mean, it still is. When people go anywhere they travel, it's the number 2 thing they want to do. They want to try local restaurants, and they want to shop local. I mean, they want those independent mom and pop boutiques. And that's wherever they go. Doesn't matter, city, rural, wherever. So do you think that was, and then what do you think that you took away from that, and what you know, to create the Good Market experience?
Yeah, I would say I think the Apple stores certainly made a difference, but I don't think it's just about Apple. I wouldn't say that they were the ones that necessarily completely changed retail experience. I believe, and Mary Beth, you maybe feel differently, I believe that there's also a generational component that's come into play. And if you think back to when department stores were king, they were all about experience. And I mentioned I was at Saks. Saks Fifth Avenue in New York City had a ski slope in the store. That's highly experiential. And through the course of retail, and this is probably when you were a buyer too, it got so homogenized and so sort of focused on numbers. And again, we're a public company,
Right.
so we're focused on numbers too. It's
Right.
not about that, but it just became that if it wasn't generating profit, it
Right.
didn't have a place in the store.
Right.
And so I think
Right.
there's this generation that sort of went through a period where they didn't have that experience and started looking for experience again.
Right.
So Apple certainly was a catalyst, but I think you talked about local. all of those things kind of coming together have really, I think, gotten us to where we are today.
And I think something really interesting that I just realized. So when you look at Good Market, the idea of it is really you're serving as sort of the collaborators and aggregators of these brands that are high quality, that also have a purpose, or part of their proceeds go with a mission.
Right.
So if you think about it, you really are very much what, on a smaller scale, what your work in department stores were, because there again, you're not the manufacturer, unlike separate Vera Bradley, because they are the manufacturer.
Yes.
But from both of you, in the world of department stores, that's what you did.
Yes.
You were merchandisers.
Exactly.
I mean, you were also understanding, when you talk about buyers, I mean, they were shopping specific for their stores, not based on trying to do it all by a spreadsheet. So really, have you thought about that parallel to Good Market as being almost like what a mini department store or mercantile would be for the 21st century?
Absolutely, absolutely. And as even, we learn something new from each other every day, and I'm sitting here listening to this conversation, I'm thinking, I have different experiences in stores than Harry does. Harry goes in with this visual perspective. I go in as a consumer. I am a consumer. I was a buyer. I think that way. So I think there's even, even other milestones other than Apple. I think about what were the places that I love to shop. I loved Nordstrom back in the day because they had a cafe. I would shop with my daughters. We'd love to have lunch. They put bars in the men's area in some stores, beautiful restrooms. Just all different things that we riff off of each other. But at the end of the day, it's more of a wholesale model. As a store that we're dependent, and we remind each other every day, we're dependent on the provider of the merchandise to be successful. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes too, because I think that's where my head goes, is how do we help them so that they can help us and we can help them. So it's very circular in doing good, but the store has to look great. You have to love the product. We want the environment to be kind of very cool and casual. You want to come in and just learn. And oh, by the way, we have some really great stuff. Too.
You also put, for someone who's revenue and looking at square footage.
Yes.
Because, when I went to, of course, I look at it both as the consumer and then I also look at it from this side. I was like, they have committed a tremendous amount of floor space to your coffee bar. Now, granted, you're also supporting a local Utopian coffee, and you're getting goods from
We have GK Bakery and Fort Wayne Country Club. Yeah.
So,
and I think that's you're onto something really, because both of us do think that way a lot, but we also see the value in that and what it in turn does for the other spaces. So I would say part of the fun that we've had working together is, like, while Mary Beth talks very much about sort of the business sense and I'm more the brand creative sense, I think both of us are also passionate about each other's knowledge. Maybe enough to be dangerous. So it's almost like I can ask a question and Mary Beth can answer it, and she can ask a question, I can answer it. And that's part of what's made it really so fun. I don't want to speak for her, but certainly for me, is like I'm getting to share what I know, but I'm also getting to learn while I do it.
Well, and I think what makes a lot of the success, we have to redefine retail in every sense of the word. So I think, though, what I look at is the three words that come up to me are, which is the same as when I do with content. It's aggregate, curate, collaborate. And then it's all about presentation. So talk about, when you talk about the brands and how you're helping them, because you have a significant number that are also local brands. So talk about that and what you're doing, because partly also why you bought Pure Vita was because you looked at it and said, they have a great opportunity in the social world. They have great loyalty, and Vera Bradley already had the infrastructure and the back end, which is so critical. I remember in the early 90s, you'll probably remember Massimo. He was one of the best, hottest activewear designers. But he couldn't stay in business because he didn't understand the back end and he couldn't deliver to stores. So what he did was, when he made that relationship with Target, he got to do what he was great at, and Target did what they were great at, and that was the most. I used to tell everybody until they changed it, if you wanted one of the best constructed swimsuits, was to go to Target with Massimo, because that was what he was known for. And so I think that that's really important in terms of what you didn't just throw the baby out with the bathwater to create Good Market. So you had that base. So then how does that work with who you thought about and the vendors and this mutually beneficial relationship?
I think it's interesting, one of the things that you said earlier about how you're even envisioning what I do versus what Harry does. You would think on my side, I have the vendor relationships. He's got the vendor relationships. He's curating. I'm kind of controlling to a certain degree, what do we want to put inside the box? What's the model look like? We're calling them passions versus categories of business. You know, what do we want to ebb and flow? How successful are they versus our expectation? You know, all the normal KPIs that you think about. But Harry's out there, I've got somebody else that we need to talk to because I talked to this person who talked to that person and they're doing this and we love that, and can we bring them in? So that's what's really, I think, really exciting versus the traditional way that you normally behave when you're looking for product to open a store, like a specialty gift store, which we deal with every day on the Vera Bradley side. So I see how they manage their stores and even learning from them on how we want to think a little bit differently.
And I think that to that point, we've sort of been able to tap into everything that we've both learned through our careers and really turn it into something different that also, on the flip side of that, allows us to give a lot of it back. So these, you know, we have brands that are as young as a year old and other brands that are, you know, 9 or 10 years old. And so it's allowed us to actually not just think about what we needed to do to make the space successful, but also how can we use what we have, and not even just that, but what the company has with regards to talent, and actually help these brands that, you know, we're starting along with them. Granted, we have a big public company that's there, but we're starting this as just as scrappy as they were. There's the board didn't come and say, hey, here's tons of money and tons of support, go figure it out. This was really about, like, you have a day job to do, and if you want to do this at night and on the weekends, great, you should go do it, and let's try it, and let's, you know, see what happens. So,
And so, so you had to go get permission to do this, right? And you had to sort of say, okay, you had to put together a plan. So you were really being entrepreneurial, right?
Yeah.
Right. Totally.
Okay. So, you know, lots of big companies try, and I always say they think they want out of the box thinking, they really don't. They say they're entrepreneurial, but they're really not because of the culture and the environment. So how did you feel that Vera Bradley, and obviously probably it came from the CEO, really allowed you, and what was that like, and what kind of, talk about that, because I think people need to understand that an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter if you're in a large company or you're sitting in your living room. So talk about that, and then what did the two of you do on the weekend? Did you just sit down and start like typing and drafting things? Tell me about the
Not just the weekend, 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. and we have, you know, our day jobs, you know, still happening here. So I think it's really funny that you ask all those questions. I think Rob Wallstrom, he really empowered us from day one. He actually pushed us a lot in the pre-pandemic to all the things we talked about earlier, like, hey, look what they're doing over here. We're all out there looking as much and getting out and traveling. That's probably been the hardest part over the last several months, is we haven't traveled a lot. But getting out there and saying, and he was, you know, he'll throw ideas at us because he's a store guy too, back in the Saks days when they worked together. So have you thought about this? No, but you know, bringing a lot of those ideas together and just empowering us to come up with the crazy ideas. Harry will tell you about our first deck that we pitched. That was like, in my mind, blah, 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 right? Like, where's the meat behind it? But we're like, okay, let's go. See if it's a crazy idea or not.
I think that's exactly, I mean, you know, we sort of approached it like a research and development initiative, which we need to be doing, and honestly, companies need to be doing all the time. And to your point about companies either being entrepreneurial or not, we're fortunate that entrepreneurial spirit is part of the DNA, and I think both Barb and Pat reinforce that all the time, but also with Paul and Griff joining the team, clearly they're coming from an entrepreneurial place.
Those are the founders of Pure Vita.
Pure Vita, correct. So I think the entrepreneurial spirit is part of the RA corporate regardless, but to, you know, kind of answer that with regards to this kind of first deck, it was literally, like, we had this, and people have asked, like, where did this idea come from? I think the idea found us, because none of us actually remember who it was that said first, the two brands that are part of the company have this beautiful foundation of doing good. Let's bring brands together that are doing good. But we did get to that point and built out this very fluffy deck that was black, gray, and white, and a lot of words that didn't mean anything, with like 3 words thrown in that meant something. And we literally just like sat with Rob on a call and like read 6 or 7 pages of this very fluffy PowerPoint to him. And he's like, yeah, I think you're onto something, but that's a lot of fluff. So
Now you gotta-
now we got to do
yeah,
something.
right,
So
right.
Yeah.
that's when the business piece kicked in, and Mary Beth and our other partner in the project, Marcy, who's our head of real estate, started kind of putting together numbers like, what would it look like? How could we, what did we need to do to be able to just pay rent and pay people to run the
Right.
store and pay utilities? And so, I mean, people might say that it was a great business plan. I think it was probably the scrappiest Excel sheet ever, but it turned into something.
Yeah, but
But that's the way most
yeah.
businesses start.
Right.
We're just used to working for the bigger ones, right?
Well, the truth is, first of all, anybody who's going to look at a business, first thing they do is take your financials and
Yeah.
throw them out, because anybody can. It's really about the people and the vision, and I would think that that's the same with the partners and that you chose, that they
100%.
had to have a vision and a purpose. So let's talk a little bit about this sustainability type of retail, because of the internet, now people know where things are made, how they're made, what factories they're made in. If they don't support human rights, if they're not using certain, I mean, the typical one would be like blood diamonds, for instance. People want to know, especially where their things come from, just like they want to know where their produce comes from. And so talk about how that idea and this idea of sustainability, really how you took these trends basically and executed them into something tangible.
Yeah, I would say I don't know that they are. I wouldn't probably use the same word trends when I describe them. I think they're definitely a shift in the world.
They're more like
Right.
now. Well, they always say there's a difference between fad, trends, and lifestyle.
Yeah.
So a fad is like pet rock.
Right.
Okay. A trend is like a trend is like athleisure, like no one's wearing denim anymore. And then the lifestyle is what happened with athleisure, that now everything's gone casual. So I'm saying these are trends, but now they've become a lifestyle.
And
which
that's
is,
sort of been the beauty
right.
of it, is that there are people out there that are doing those kinds of things. And just like you mentioned, the internet, it sort of worked the same way for us, that we were able to get into the brands before we had conversations and really understand. I mean, part of it is just talking to people and knowing people and hearing stories firsthand, and part of it is, what are they really doing? And we've even been saying, like, how do we make sure every single day that they're doing that? Because I do think that there's always a risk that, things can get overwhelming and people could start doing less, and whatever that looks like. So we, part of our goal is really to continue to watch those things and stay close to the brands every day. And no matter if it's one store or 100 stores, it doesn't matter. It's about really being close to who is there and what it is that they're doing. So the internet has been really helpful in allowing us to do the research, and we've been able to visit a number of them. Even though the travel's been limited, we've been able to visit a number of them and meet all of them in person at some point, to really know that they are doing what they're saying they're doing. I think that the industry certainly runs the risk of, maybe even you might call it greenwashing, but this idea that it's the thing to do. We have internally a very strong ESG point of view, and
What is ESG?
ESG is environmental social governance, right? So we believe in that, and we've said, just from the Vera Bradley point of view, that by 2025 we'll be 100% sustainable in the products that we're selling. So we are close enough to that, and I think understood it, and it's really part of who we are. So as we started talking about people that do good, we've been really sensitive to what good means, and I think that everybody wants to do good ultimately, and there's good in everybody, but what my good is and what your good is may not always be the same things. We've intentionally, though, stayed away from things that are polarizing politically, because at times there are things that become not good as a result of that. So whether the good is about sustainability, when we talk about organic farms and employing people that might have been previously incarcerated or in negative circumstances or situations, it's more about kind of finding out what they're doing and how they're approaching good, and then making sure that that's true. And Mary Beth and I had the opportunity just earlier this week to actually be in one of the jewelry factories and meet the people that have learned how to make jewelry.
Really?
And it's real people that are telling real
Interesting.
stories. Yeah. So
I just got chills. Yeah, it was really great to meet the women in their safe space, and we were staying very quiet, very serene,
Where was
versus
this?
their background. We were in Nashville at a brand called Able, ABLE.
Is this a new brand that you're looking at, or is it a brand new?
It's a
one?
brand
we have
new
it in
store.
Good Market.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, talking about the brands, I mean, because of the internet and because everybody can shop anywhere and find everything, and
Right.
also because there are you're competing against lots of other stores that bring in brands. How do you find brands or things that are unique or exclusive, or are you looking to find like that entrepreneur who's starting something or has an idea? Is this also going to be an incubator as well as a laboratory for your own retail merchandising experiences?
I think it certainly could be, but I actually would love Mary Beth to talk about kind of how we split it up first, and then I can get.
I think if we could just back up for a second, I would say that we never even thought about the internet when we were thinking about the concept.
Right.
Our challenge was, how do you change the experience in our stores? And folks were going after experience by putting rock walls in stores and all different things.
Right.
What's the experience need to be? And we sat down and said, let's flip the whole dynamic as we were talking about the store. What if people came in, once we kind of came upon this good idea, what
No
if
pun
people,
intended.
no pun intended, we use it every day in everything that we say. What if people came in just to really learn? And we offered them a cup of coffee, have a seat, check out the brands that we have. We put the QR codes in that you can hear from the founders themselves. What if we had different sales associates who talk about, we call them storytellers. What brings you in today? Have you heard the story about the store, as opposed to, hey, what can I help you find today? It was almost this, how do you make this feel completely different than any other store? They learn something, hopefully walk away feeling like they've done good, and they may find something that they love.
So basically, in a way, what you're doing is you're taking what everybody says, which is what basically I do, which is content is king, and it's all about the narrative and the story, and you're bringing it into a 3D environment for somebody to engage in and experience in that sense.
So it wasn't about what are we competing against or who do we have to find that we're going to get on the front end of that. It wasn't that at all.
Right.
It was almost like, okay, this is what we want to do. We figured out what kind of passions we wanted to have in the stores. We went to the market. Harry had connections, and a lot of our team had other connections locally, like, what did you think about this brand or that brand? And making sure that at some point along their path of their product that they're doing some kind of good. And there's a lot of different good that we're actually bringing into the store. So the internet was never a concern, and now we're talking about, okay, how do we blow that up bigger that we can tell the story wider, but still have that same experience on a website.
Right.
So.
Or through technology.
Through
'cause
technology.
There's other ways
Yeah.
that it's not just a website
Yeah.
that people,
For sure. We have a tagline that's part of our story that says the product on the shelf is only half the story. And I said story like 14 times that one sentence. But we do believe that. And talking about the product and even the way that the product sits together and what the quality is and all of that stuff is super important. But it really does start with the purpose and the story that caused it to come to life. So to that point, just whether we're talking about podcasts that we might be recording or videos that the founders are sending us that Mary Beth talked about, you can watch in the store, or even our current informational website that you can go to and just learn more. That education piece became really, really important, really from the beginning, because we wanted to learn, and it makes sense to really share those stories. And when we see people come into the store today, it doesn't matter what age they are, what race they are, what gender they are, what socioeconomic status, and we're getting all of that. Half of them may not even know that they get to learn a story when they come in, but all of them get excited to hear the stories, and maybe they want to hear one, or maybe they want to hear 10, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. We're just really there to allow the brands to.
Well, you're also, there are certain things that are of human nature and the psychology of why we buy and how we buy. And one of the things, so it was funny, I went into the Bradley Hotel and I was like, it smells, and I have a real sensitivity to smell, okay? I was like, it smells really good in here. And so I asked the front desk, and I said, it smells really good. And they said, oh, well, Provence, the hotel company, actually has a special scent that's made for each of their hotels or properties, and then they pump it in. And that's what retailers do, but it really gives you that, it enhances, it's like a multi-sensory. It's like you eat with all your senses, you shop with all your senses, and so it makes sense that you're letting people use their biggest, which is their brain, and that emotional connection and understanding. But it's also about how pretty. And what I thought, it is, because the truth is, we can say, you have a really great t-shirt company, the one that does like the parts of the family, and then you have, and then you have Vera Bradley has the really cute stuff for the dogs, and these aren't necessarily new items, or like I always say, there are no new ideas. It's really the execution. So a lot of this to me was how it was merchandised, and like I was really curious how you came up with the idea of using those artistic hands that people, the models, to that people use to draw. How you came up with those elements, and then how you really you also sort of set things askew in the store. Like you have some like false walls, I guess, of merchandise that's not straight. It's sort of, they're sort of different angled, so you really have to sort of meander around. And so I'm really curious how much you thought about that, which I believe is a tremendous amount, and why certain of those things and how they came about.
It's funny.
We're laughing over here on this side of the table.
Yeah, you're probably going to love the answer, hopefully. So I think the funny thing is, let's kind of strip it back. My career has been really about store design, store planning, visual merchandising, which is basically the smoke and mirrors of retail, right? And our jobs are always to take whatever product it is that we're given and make it inviting to buy. The Williams-Sonoma space, the former Williams-Sonoma space that we took over, basically, we weren't, like I said earlier, we weren't given a huge budget to go in and build a new space. And remember, I come from a world where we would build a $30 million palace to luxury goods. We literally painted it, took up the wood floor because we had to, because it wasn't safe to walk on, and we used tables and fixtures that we had from previous showrooms or stores that had closed, and brought it in and set it up. And I think what's been fun for me, and certainly for Mary Beth too, is that, I mean, we come from a world of mixed products and mixed brands, and so the Vera Bradley product also gave us a challenge going in because it was one brand. Now we're working with a lot of brands. So, and there's someone on my team that comes from that department store world. And what I think it's done is it's allowed us actually to even push our creativity that much more. To just try things, and it's almost been kind of a breath of fresh air to the team to just get to play with things. They work with duffels and backpacks and lunch bags a lot. Now they're getting to do candles and blankets and whatever those things might be. So was there planning? I think we did very rough space planning, kind of space allocation. Those walls were there. We didn't put those in.
Those were there.
Yeah,
Okay.
the cafe in the middle was there. We just took the demo kitchen and turned it into a cafe.
We took the glass doors off the knife wall.
And that's the jewelry wall. So. I think it's just kind of tapping into what we knew, and people were often surprised when I was at Saks, the windows that we would do and what the budgets were. We would spend $125 per week per window, so it's not like a massive budget when you think about that. So you learn how to do things and make things different and use things differently. And the articulated arms that you mentioned were actually arms that we had saved in our warehouse. From broken mannequins.
I was going to say, please don't tell me they're from mannequins.
No, they were from broken.
I was coming up with this whole artistic thing.
They were from broken forms, and we had them. It was just about how do we do things differently? I mean, the branch that's hanging in the store, literally one of the people on our team called her husband and said, "Go out in the backyard. There's a great branch. Cut it down." We got on FaceTime. He threw it in the back of his truck. Brought it. So
the metal shelves, the wood shelves are being chopped and on one of our team members' driveway at 11 o'clock at night.
With his headlights giving him light.
And I think that really what's also really important for people to understand is that even though you had a large company behind you, this was very much like how people do an entrepreneurial endeavor. I mean, and you also, I thought was so interesting is that you had a lot of people from Vera Bradley willing to assist and help you because Vera Bradley also has an opportunity that if people volunteer, they can get paid time off. So people were interested in really giving of their time to help you build this. But I think these stories are really important, both from the smaller entrepreneurial brands that you work with, but also for entrepreneurs to understand that it's not like, because sometimes I used to joke, when I start companies, I always say, if I only had the resources of a large company. And the truth is, you don't necessarily get those anyway. So,
and our team members have been amazing, and it really is the sensibility of our culture of Vera Bradley that we are community. And we're thinking about other ventures around this, and everybody wants to be on part of the team, and they're not using their time off. They're giving us their time without any ask back of anything. It's like, how can we help, really? And even the community outside of Vera Bradley has really leaned in locally, so it's been really fun.
And it's also, I mean, I think also what's really important is that they talk about this whole idea of fail fast, but there has to be some room for risk and willing to try things. So I'm curious to find out, how did the whole project with the marigolds? So tell about that, and
Yeah, so it actually was an easy one, but I think not unlike a number of the things in there.
People
Is
would
like
think initially this is pretty crazy.
Project X generates Project Y. So I don't believe there are any bad ideas. I think even the craziest idea, while may not be able to be executed, could generate something else. So it's kind of funny the way the Marigolds came about. One of the brands that's in the store, Anshul, we knew their story, and their story focuses on creating natural dyes, and the Marigold happens to be the one that they use the most frequently. And through the course of the creative, we had actually, knowing that story, had grabbed an image of a marigold, and it became part of our brand presentation. So as we were setting up the store, and I've learned very quickly living in Fort Wayne, you don't plan anything before Mother's Day. So we were opening in April, and we were looking at this empty flower bed out front. I thought, like, wouldn't it be interesting if the mall would let us plant marigolds there? Because A, it's directly tied to one of the brands and one of the good things that's going on in the store, but B, they're also nice and they're bright and they're happy.
B, they're also wasn't expensive because they're seeds,
Yeah.
so you didn't have to buy planted plants.
Right. So so
for your
all of those
budget.
things
Yes.
kind of came together. The mall was super excited about it. Actually, Anshul has this urban farming side of their company, and so it was an opportunity for us to bring them up and actually help educate people on urban farming. But even still, fast forward to the marigolds are growing and it's time to harvest them, and they need to be harvested about every 2 weeks. We brought in a group from the Boys and Girls Club to actually help us harvest, and then they got to make the dye and they got to dye t-shirts, and so it's that education thing just kept going and kept going. And we're already brainstorming what ideas. Marigolds go away in about September. Like, what are the
already have
ideas?
ideas.
So we have some crazy ideas already for how to use that. But I think all of that goes back to, Sarah, the mall has been such an amazing partner.
Oh, yeah.
And they're so focused on what they can do to help and how they can be a part of the community. And so that's been amazing.
Well, it's partly also because malls have to reinvent themselves too,
Right.
and Jefferson Point also, they changed it. They created that street down the middle because the fact of the matter is that the world of retail and how people want to shop and buy has changed,
Right.
but not the delight and wonder of it, and when you come across something or you find that perfect gift or that, and it's also a very social experience.
Totally.
Except when you're buying, I always say I don't need people when I'm buying clothes. But you can meet up with people, and like I remember, like we used to when I was growing up, our mall, I grew up in Miami Beach, was the Bell Harbor Shops. That was because I lived down the street.
I know that one well.
So
I do too.
that was right. 'Cause
I like to shop there.
Right, and so, but I remember with my mother, we went for the day, and then you'd go, and then you'd have lunch at Mrs. Grimble's, and then you would shop, and it becomes also that connection and social experience.
Right.
So that but yet people don't want to feel that they're being frivolous with their time, or that, when people say, oh, they're, just going to go shopping. And so it's very intentional, and because we do have demands on our time. So talk about how you incorporate all of these things and all these facts and research and trends into what you're doing, and what have you learned so far, good and bad, with Good Market?
You take it.
I'm chuckling again because I don't think it was that well thought out. Now that it's coming to life and we're learning more, we're kind of thinking about that more, but it was just more of here's a lot of crazy ideas, let's just go, not let's go do some research and then figure things out. We thought it would just kind of organically evolve into what is the customer going to like, and we're learning now. We're looking back the last 3 months to see, oh, I'm surprised she likes this. Oh, I'm surprised she's not responding to this as well. But I think Harry was humble in the earlier commentary. His team's doing an amazing job on the creative and pulling things together, moving things around, and making it feel like this great experience. As we learned, the plants have been an unbelievable
Urban Petal.
addition.
Yeah.
Well, Urban Petal, I've interviewed. He's amazing.
Yeah.
And he, when he did, I did a story with him for weddings and stuff.
Yeah.
But how, again, it's all his presentation and how he really taps into the trends of wanting it to be more environmental and having plants and,
Yeah. I think I would add on to that, one of the things that I've learned is that we were right, that people want community.
Yeah.
And people want to do good together. We certainly had hoped that, and I think we've proven that is true. And when you sit at the cafe, which we'd love to have you do, and when we were just at the store before we came here, there were a group of 6 or 7 women sitting out front.
Outside,
Yeah.
Having
just
coffee and
enjoying the
lemonade.
morning.
Yeah. They probably took a yoga class over, or,
I
don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I think that when you see people come in and know that everybody really is welcome and everybody, is there for the same reason, and we say you belong here. I mean, everybody really does belong. And when you have words on a page, they don't mean anything until there's actually truth behind it.
Right.
And when we've actually gotten to learn that there is truth behind all of that, that's what's probably been most amazing. What's the bad that we've learned?
Oh gosh,
I don't
I don't know. I don't think there is anything bad.
But
I
now,
mean,
are you
we're just moving
worried
forward.
now? Because this is also what happens. Okay, so this sort of came out of a serendipitous kind of experience, and you probably was. You have to also know that intuitively, you two, from your years of experience, a lot of this is intuition, and it's your gut.
Sure.
Okay. But are you worried now that you have to put sort of that structure and those numbers and analysis, that you're going to lose some of what you're looking to do? And as you look, because I think, aren't you opening another?
We have a pop-up that'll open in Soho this holiday. Yeah, I'm not worried about that at all. And I think, if anything, that may have been one of the biggest learnings for the corporate culture of Vera Bradley, is that this project has definitely allowed us to, Mary Beth keeps us so on the mark with regards to when product is here, how much we have, how much we're going to need. But that needs to happen in any business. Big or small, doesn't matter. If a business is going to succeed, you need that part. If anything, I think we probably have learned that together, that with this actually can move forward. And there's more new to find and more good to do all the time. And if we can take part of that and put it back into the culture of this brand, these two brands that are behind us, then we've accomplished far more than we ever even thought about. So
Again, I think of it a little bit differently too, that sure, we are going to put more thought into what we actually want to have in the store and how we're going to build it. We're forecasting now for the back half of the year. We have Belkai, who is local here, right? And we had a conversation with Whitney in market in Atlanta and gave her a forecast. But where I take it differently from my previous lives are, the better that we can do with her, the better that she can do on the back end. Right. So that gives me a whole different outlook on, what we're actually trying to hone in better. We were talking about we need the chains. If we don't have the chains, the charms fail.
The charms don't work.
Right. So what do we need to do to help you get the chains early enough? How many do we need? Give you, what can we do better for you to help you do better? So, that's just totally a whole different way of thinking about things. So yeah, I want to do better. I want to focus it in. I don't want them to build product that we don't need or our customers aren't appreciating. It doesn't do better for them.
Right.
Let them focus on things that are really driving the business. So, and the customer, I think, appreciates, this is our big learning here, appreciates what we're showing them, whether they're buying it for themselves or they're gifting it forward. That gift that they're gifting forward is also gifting backwards, and that gives everybody a different, that different sense of good.
Shop well, do good.
Yeah.
Because it's also when people give a gift, that gift is also a reflection of the giver as well, and so you do want to, it does demonstrate what you think about or what's important to you, and if you don't just give just go and buy anything. So I think it does make a difference. Yeah. But what has surprised you the most? Because now I'm going to say, okay, you've got, I don't know, between you probably 50 years of experience.
30.
A little more.
All right. So a good amount of your experience in retail,
for sure.
understanding this. And so now, in some ways, it's sort of like, okay, we had to throw out the textbook.
We did.
Yeah.
So what's the new textbook? What would you say are the principles?
We had to throw out a few chapters of the textbook.
Okay.
I would say that some of the foundation and the grounding is what is really, really good for us, right? We threw out we can't do that because we threw in gosh, that's a great idea. What would it take to get there? That's more of my perspective, and just like crazy ideas. And here we are, I think an aha moment for me along the path was we're looking at others to see how we can incorporate what they're doing. Now we're looking inside ourselves for different ideas of what we can do. That's really fun.
Well, because the big thing also is you have a space, and so like when you were saying you brought in the Boys and Girls Club and that you invite people into the community in this space. And then you had classes, and then and it's not just about, but probably you also sometimes at night, you've got to be looking at and saying, okay, we're giving up all this square footage and we're not, because it's all about revenue per square footage, and we're not, but are we making it back in a different way, or is that, you know, I mean, you have to relook that too, right? And also you probably also have to retrain some of the board or your CEO to say, when you look at revenue here, it does have to look a little different, because that's what I mean. Because when people really want out of the box thinking, you've got to really say this is not going to. It's not going to look the same. It's not going to be revenue modeled the same. It can't be measured the same. It can't be assessed the same. Because if you put anything that the same onto it, then it's not really new and innovative, and that is very scary for lots of people.
I mean, it's really funny that you bring that up, because Mary Beth and I were just kind of talking about that earlier today, about sort of the first quarter, right? We're 3.5, 4 months in. Even the way, as we sort of step back and say what's working, what's not working, even that is not about looking at the traditional way of what's working and what's not working, because P.S. it shouldn't be, right? And that was like, I was like, wait, and Mary Beth was like, no, we have to, like, it's different. And she was 100% right. It's like, it's easy to think about units per transaction. That's a no-brainer.
Our normal KPIs.
Right? Our normal KPIs.
And a KPI is
key performance indicator, revenue, turn, average unit sale, all of those normal things that you think about.
It's very different to think about. We've, through the course of us being open now for, call it 15 weeks, we've given over 350 meals to children.
We're going to measure that.
The definition of value takes on a new meaning.
Because also, in some ways, what you have to think about is you're building loyalty. And what you really are building is that return customer. And although people, in theory, can understand this, that it costs less to keep the customers you already have than to get the new ones.
Right.
We all spend too much time on the new one and not on the existing customers and the returning customers, and building that loyalty and having it that want to want to be more involved or understand more. And so you can't look at the same models because of that, right?
And we don't. And it, you know, part of what we will continue to stay focused on, as long as we get to do this, whether it's a year or 10 years or 100 years and we're both long gone, I would hope that we're continuing to look for what is the next good. To your point about somebody comes in today, if you come in today and you learn about 10 brands and you come back 6 months later and you can only learn about those same 10 brands, A, perhaps you will learn something new about them, which is great, but more importantly, B, there should be somebody new for you to learn about. And so we should stay continually focused on who else is out there, who else can we amplify the story of, who else can we help do more with. You know, because to your point, like, if you're in and you love us, and hopefully everybody that's been in does love us, you're going to want to come back for more. You don't get obsessed with chocolate cake because it tasted bad. Chocolate cake tastes good. That's why you want another piece, right? So I mean,
well, it depends who's baking the chocolate cake.
Right, but to your point, like,
but
if you bake a good chocolate
I also
cake.
think that people want, you know, that's why when you look at it in the athleisure, like with Lululemon, okay, they used to be now, you know, they're very mainstream. So now all of those people want these little brands now. People want to discover it for themselves. So I would also think that with Good Market, part of the challenge is also going to be, as you look to go into different markets, is that connection with the community in terms of the entrepreneurs and do-gooders in those communities, as well as keeping it with that, you know, giving it that sense of what's for that community, which really goes back to the old days when you shopped for that store, not for a region or for the whole country, but you understood what was the nuances of the customer in Soho versus the customer in Fort Wayne.
Yeah, we're going to learn. We're going to continue to learn different things about that. We do know that she likes local product, and not just made locally, but identified locally. So we're, you know, thinking what kind of merchandise that could lead to. There's a lot of different things in our heads about what is next. I think what I learned here too is the do good community is really tight. So there is that network of all these relationships that we've made. Have you met these people yet? That's what Harry's like, kind of the feelers are out all over the place, and then does it fit within the box of what we really need? Do we need another jewelry brand? Maybe not. We need this, you know? So we're curating with a cause. with a purpose.
Well, you're
and-
curating with a vision and a mission, which
Yeah.
is the best curators.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you have to always keep that, but you're also aggregating it, and because it doesn't matter, to me, it doesn't matter what brand, what industry. It's all about how it looks, the presentation, is it compelling? But then it's not just style, you want substance.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to give beyond just it looks pretty.
And to your point of that, and maybe this is a good way to kind of sum it all together, is you talked about kind of non-traditional ways of looking at things. As we got a little bit into this, it's like, okay, do we need to build out a mission statement? Do we need to build out vision, values? Perhaps, but even that approach was very different and actually checks exactly those boxes: good people, great products, and exceptional causes. And if we're not checking those boxes, then we're not being successful. So to your point about substance and curation, it's really all of those things together. We had a hard time saying which one is good. At the end of the day, we're all about the causes. We're all about the good. So that became very clear. Yeah.
Great. Well, at the end of each And Good Company program, I ask guests the same 12 questions that French novelist Marcel Proust popularized from a Victorian parlor game. So, what is your favorite word?
Family.
Happy.
What is your least favorite word?
Moist.
Oh my gosh, I thought you were going to say no, so I'll say no, but moist is up there too.
We just said that today. We're like, you can't do moist. No moist.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Oh, ask him first.
Family.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know. Optimism.
What turns you off creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
No.
Or negativity?
Negativity.
Yeah,
either one. The
negativity
word
for
no.
sure.
Negativity.
Right.
Yeah.
Can't.
Yeah.
Or we've always done it this way. Sorry.
Yeah.
But
It's all of those
all of
down that
those.
path,
Yeah,
right?
all of those.
what sound or noise do you love?
Sound, laughter,
Rain.
What sound or noise do you hate?
rain.
Gunning engines.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Theater production, actually.
You are
Kind of what I do, sort of. But
This is really funny now that I'm thinking about it. I've always wanted to own my own store, so this is kind of a little piece of that, right?
and I would throw if you ask my family, they would tell you I've always wanted to have an ice cream store. So maybe that's, we don't serve ice
Here we
cream,
go.
but maybe we
But
should.
maybe that might be the next
Maybe we
thing.
should.
next thing. There's a lot of good brands. What profession would you not like to do?
I don't want to be a roofer. It's so hot. I don't like the heat. I have a huge appreciation for it, but I don't want to do it.
I don't even have an answer for that. I would try anything, I would think, and then if I don't like it, then I'll move on to something rather than cut it off right now and say I would never want to do that.
Yeah.
What do you consider your greatest achievement?
My family, for sure.
Same.
Who, living or dead, would you most like to have a conversation with?
This is such a great age-old
This
question.
is a good one for me.
Is it a good one for you?
It's my dad, for sure.
Is it? Mine
Is
is.
he no longer here?
He passed away before I was like a year and a half, so I never had a conversation, so that would be easy.
So funny enough, and these similarities happen a lot. Mine would also be my dad, who I lost when I was 8.
How would you like to die?
Never.
Not in an airplane.
Okay.
Peacefully in my
In
sleep
my
would
sleep,
be great.
for
Okay.
sure.
And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Great job.
Hey, we got this room we need you to fix.
It's all white.
At which point I could say, I don't like residential design, but I'm really good at commercial design, so maybe I could do the waiting room.
Maybe you could, right, exactly, right, that would be great. Well,
We have one for you.
Okay,
Good?
go
Do you
ahead.
have time?
Yeah, go ahead.
So really quickly, when we were sort of building out the idea behind Storytellers, we said we wanted really unusual questions. And so we came up with this idea of, because we're so focused on storytelling, if you had to pick who could tell your story, your personal story, who would you pick and why?
I would pick Charles Schultz.
Cool.
Because one, I think he would have substance, but it would be cute, and because graphic novels are going to be much better read than any narrative of a biography.
For sure.
So,
Excellent answer.
so,
Thanks so much. What a
Really
blast.
fun.
yeah, well, thank you
Yeah,
so much,
really
and I hope you'll come back and join me
Oh,
again
we
at the
would love
table.
to.
Just tell us when.
We
We'd
would
love
love
it.
to.
We'll come back for dessert for sure.
Okay. And you can learn more about And Good Company and all the other great conversations we have had at andgoodcompany.info. And we look forward to next week when you can again enjoy a seat at the table for great conversation and good company.